Thank you very much indeed, and I very much appreciate the various contributions I heard. I look back on the record to earlier contributions. To respond to Senator McDougall, and you could easily, we could easily go from why should we do anything about it, it's too late to do anything about it, despondency, and there's no doubt about it, it's going to be a challenge beyond compare. It's an incredible change. If you look at what we need to do, half our emissions this decade, net zero in 3, it's no small change, and it will require huge effort. Various things make me confident that we can and will do it. First, it's not just there because of Programme for Government Commitment. Programme for Government Commitment was the correct one. It was a science-based approach, Paris Climate Agreement. Science saying what we need to do to reduce the probability, not completely avoid, but to reduce the probability of runaway climate change where we go over tipping points for a developed country like Ireland just half our emissions in a decade. We're committed to that through the Paris Climate Agreement, through our Programme for Government, but we're also committed in the European Union. I mean, next week we're going to European Energy Council where the Fit for 55, where Europe is going to 55%, not 50, and the vast 8, I think, major legislative blocks of change coming from Europe. This is the European strategy. This is the European economic strategy as well as climate strategy. This is the entire effort, and it's backed up by what's happening in the war in Ukraine. Our alternative, we stay reliant on imported fossil fuels, where we don't set the price, where we lose the balance of payments, where we don't get the jobs, where we're exposed, is not tenable. And so even if it wasn't in that Programme for Government Commitment, we'd still be compelled towards it. And we're not in a good place because we did have a lost decade from 2010, roughly 11 onwards. We didn't see the emissions reductions we're achieving in other countries. So what we have to do is probably more challenging now than some of our neighbouring countries because they've been taking some of the actions in the last decade. None of them are perfect. None of them are actually that good. If you look under the hood, we're not that far behind, but we are behind and need to catch up and need to overtake. To answer your question, is there a plan? Well, there is. It's the Climate Action Plan. And I believe it is a good structure, and it's backed up by the climate law, which we passed last year. And one of the most compelling reasons why I think it is the right structure is that it came out of political consensus. It wasn't just this government. It was built on the work that Minister Richard Bruton did in the previous administration, setting up just such a structure, just such a planned approach, with hundreds of actions testing to see, are we on track to meeting what we said we would commit to do? More than any other piece of public policy, you could look at that climate law, you could look at the Climate Advisory Council, the carbon budgets we've set up, and the action plan, which is designed to be revised every year, plus the sectoral targets so that each minister, each area knows what their particular what they have to do is. So, and that plan, that climate action plan, initiated last November, will be revised this November. It's designed to be an iterative plan, to look exactly as you say, if we're falling behind in some area, not that we'll arrive suddenly at 2030 and say, oh, well, it didn't quite go the way we thought it would. It requires ministers to adjust. If we're failing to fall behind in one area, to adjust and to change policy so we do make it. And that's a real challenge. But it is also an opportunity. The reason I believe we will achieve this challenge is because it actually will only work if we're moving towards a better system. So if you take the variety of key areas we need to change, in energy, the biggest probably area, we have to change from being reliant, one of the most reliant on imported fossil fuels, one of the highest dependency on gas for our power generation, a country with a record of massive increase in demand for oil in our transport sector over the last 20, 30 years, switching to where we use our own energy fuels, where we have securely available to it, and also where we have a comparative competitive advantage. We live in a very windy country. This is where all the investment, all the technological innovation, all the development is taking place. So why wouldn't we tap into that comparative competitive advantage and actually switch from burning imported fuels brought from a long distance, now at huge cost, towards an alternative which we have control over ourselves? So I think, and we're good at it, we're good at balancing variable supply. The Danes what my father used to say, you get a reputation for being an early riser, you can lie in for the rest of your time. Well, the Danes are very good at integrating renewables, but I think we're actually better. Because we run our integrated renewables on an isolated, synchronised system where we're good at this variable supply and variable demand management. So we should build on what we're good at. Similarly, in transport, and I heard Senator Buttimer, I think he's right. I think we're going to transform Cork for the better. Switching away from, Cork went through, like so many of Irish cities, went down a sprawled model. Nothing wrong with Ballincollig or Carrigaline or Middleton or all the towns that prospered as Cork hollowed out. But now is the time to bring life back into the centre. And the likes of that metropolitan rail system for Cork, which we're building, it's real, it's happening. The likes of that new station in Tivoli will put, I'm meeting with the LGA the other day, we could house 11,000 people in Tivoli. Like, stunning location, right on the river, close walking distance to the centre of town, with the train station with the 10-15 minute, better than the DART service. What's not to like about that as a way of switching, changing? And the benefit of that is that the emissions reduction is not just in the mode of transport, but actually in the reduction of volume of transport, because you're living closer to the centre, this 15-minute city concept. And I could go right across this country to cities and towns and villages where that transformation can and will and should apply, and use our own power supply, use electricity rather than oil. And that's, European Council next week is going to agree the end of the combustion engine by 2035. I don't see anyone saying no to it. The Parliament would say yes to it. So this is coming, and this is the better economy, and this is something we can be good at. Same in farming. The current farming system is not serving the vast majority of Irish farmers. The average beef farmer on an income, is it, Senator Mary Higgins, Alice Mary Higgins would remember the figure from our committee's work, was it 13,000, 16,000 a year, some such figure, the average income for the average beef farmer? And could we not say, okay, well, let's start paying them for other services, for nature-based services, and that again is where the market is going. The Irish food industry relies on exports. The big companies, the Kerry Groups, the Glanbias, they are commissioned to, Kerry Group committing to science-based targets, because they know that if they're not following science-based targets, they won't get finance in 5 or 10 years' time, and they'll find it very difficult to sell on an Origin Green brand. Kerry Grohl won't get the premium if we're not truly green in everything we do. So they've committed to a 30% reduction in their Scope 3 emissions, where the farmers that provide them their goods have to deliver a 30% emissions reduction. And again, I think one of the income streams we'll get to Irish farming is the likes of those cooperatives, processors, meat companies and dairy companies, starting to pay farmers more for delivering that 30% reduction, which is what we need. We know what we need. Lastly, and I'm very conscious of time, and efficiency in everything. Actually, they're really challenging. Next week, we're going to the European Council where they're setting limits on the energy use. And in Ireland, with a growing economy, like, the challenge is beyond compare. And then you look, oh, and by the way, we're one of the fastest growing economies in Europe, and also the fastest growing population in Europe, with workers coming in on work permits, with displaced people now from Ukraine, significant increase in refugees, as well as our own population growth. How are we going to do all that? And also do a restriction in the amount of energy we use, which is what the European Commission is insisting on. Real challenge. And yes, there was a contradiction in our policy around data centres. We kept the door too open too long. And it's not saying this easy trope that's out there, data centres are the evil responsible for everything, all our woes and climate. It's just not true. And there is 150,000, 200,000, whatever the number is, of people working in the digital industries here that do want to see data centres as well as those jobs. And we can design our data centres in a way they're part of the solution, where the waste heat, because it's mainly heat is the energy use in data centres, managing the heat, can be used for district heating, real efficiency. And, well, no, but we can design it in Athenry where it's there, the backup power they have strengthens the grid. And their demand management capability gives us flexibility. And Athenry isn't too far from Shannon Estuary, Moneypoint, where all that offshore wind is going to come ashore. And as the ESB are saying, convert it to hydrogen at Moneypoint. When the wind is blowing, You run from Money Point up and run something in Athenry or elsewhere. And when the wind isn't, you burn that hydrogen in a zero carbon power generation system that runs the data centre or whatever runs our homes. That's not impossible. Yes.
Not impossible.
And I'll tell you the reason it'll happen. Go back to efficiency, and retrofitting is the most. And the reason we will get the workforce is because the current system before this was always stop-start. It was telling builder contractors, oh, you've worked for 6 months and then you stop for 6 months, and we'll tell you in 5 months' time whether you have more money. And no wonder the industry didn't scale up. But now we know that they have 9 billion funding guaranteed for the next 10 years, so they will scale up. And young people coming out of college or school this summer doing their leaving cert, if they want a career for 30 years that's helping solve the key problems of our society, that's deeply rewarding and fulfilling because you're improving people's homes, improving the health of their homes, there's nothing better, those numbers will rise, as well as being able for us to be able to provide our homes. But I'll finish on this point, efficiency in everything. This switch to an electrified system backed up by hydrogen, this switch to electric vehicles, this switch to really good land management, clever use of our land, it will work and it will be delivered because it is actually a better system. We won't crack the whip and turn people on political righteousness to say, have you done the right thing or the wrong thing? But we can and will, as a country, switch away from a burning system where we burn imported fuels to where we use our own in very efficient digital systems. That's the new industrial revolution that's taking place right across the world. We can and will be good at it. It'll take us a while to ramp it up, but it's happening. The retrofitting is happening. It's massive applications, like beyond compare. People are looking to do it because they realise it actually makes sense. Same way we switched from open fires to central heating in 3 decades, we'll switch in 3 decades from burning anything to having really well-insulated, electrically powered homes. Same in cars. There won't be combustion engine vehicles in 3 decades' time because the alternative is better. It's just more efficient. And that's why I'm confident we will make this leap. It is a leap. It's beyond compare. The Climate Action Plan sets out how we do it. It'll be revised in November and then again the following year. Thank you.
Thank you very much.